In FESPAC 2016, which was hosted in Guam, we, for the first time in centuries, saw that scene. And this was put in the Pacific Daily News on the day after we had the opening of the festival, and that's what we saw coming into Agana. And it was just thrilling. A week before that, a lot of the Micronesian voyagers had come in, and to me that was even more personally thrilling because it wasn't reenacted, it was real. They were coming directly from their 500-mile or longer journey, and it was really, really thrilling to see that. So moving up to, I started working at CAHA, the Arts Council, in 1985, and my job was to identify the traditional arts of Guam and the artists, and I knew they were still there. A lot of people didn't believe it. When I started doing my thesis work, I was encouraged, actually told, you know, you can't do it on Guam. There's no culture left there. There's nothing left. But I had grown up in Inarohan, and I knew there was culture there. I knew that the Pacific spirit was still there. So my thesis was on the arts of the traditional arts of Micronesia, of the Mariana Islands. So moving up to when I was working for CAHA in 1985, it was a new program. Rob Limpiaco had read about, he was going to college in Colorado, and he had read, somebody sent him magazine clippings from Guam, and they were talking about the resurgence of seafaring. So he came home, and he wanted to do an apprenticeship. Me, at CAHA, I was in charge of identifying people, and the only person who had been identified as a canoe carver was Segundo Blas. And this was in 1985, 82 actually. He was a carver, and he had learned what he had learned as a child, which was the dugout canoes. And there were a few in his time. By the time I was there were no dugout canoes. So we arranged an apprenticeship for Rob to learn from him. And as Rob said in one of his videos, it was important to learn to take that first step, because he learned how to use the ads, he learned how to work with wood, to identify woods and things like that. But he knew there was more. He knew that in Micronesia there was more knowledge that he could find. So he made contact with the people in Pulawat and went there. We helped him with an apprenticeship, and that's when I came into the program. He was already in Pulawat, studying under Rafui Yalamar and what was the other guy? The other guy's name? Tillamar. He was there, and being the bureaucrat that had to handle the apprenticeships from National Endowment money, you can imagine the problems that we had, or the problems that Rob had, because the first communication I got from Rob to kind of apply for an extension to his grant, and he was in Pulawat, was weeks late on yellow tablet paper. You can imagine his frustration, because here he is in a very traditional society trying to learn to carve a canoe and navigation, and he has to take out his yellow pad and try to figure out how to apply for a grant from Washington, D.C. So these are the kind of issues that traditional people have, and this is why having a nonprofit organization is so important. And we certainly weren't there yet. So he was there, and then just to kind of give an outline of what happened over the next 15 years. He had his first canoe carving apprenticeship in 1982, and then in 1984 he and Gary Guerrero apprenticed in Pulawa under Paolo Rafui and Tillamar. In 1987, it was very exciting for me because I had to, I was in charge of, he had notified us that he was going on this, they were sailing up, and it had never been done in our lifetime. So we had to, do all the customs and all those kind of things to make sure that they could arrive safely. So he did the sail in 1987, and they sailed with the canoe they had built called Video, and with the master navigators, Tawa Tillamar and Rafui Delaware, from Pulawat. They went from Pulawat to Picolot, and then to Guam, and that's over 500 miles. And then after Guam, they went back again via Lamatrek, Satawal, and back to Pulawat, and I don't know how long that took. But that was quite an epic adventure, and the first that had happened in, oh gosh, probably a century. So in 1990, Rob established a nonprofit organization called Traditions About Seafaring Islands, TASI, and it was mainly for him to document and teach, and he was doing that in Guam at this point. In 1994, the Micronesian we had the Micronesian Seafaring Conference in Guam, and that was facilitated by Dr. Vince Diaz and attended by practitioners as well as scholars. And that was the first canoe conference that I'm aware of. And this is what really got the University of Guam involved in supporting Micronesian seafaring. In 1999, the Traditional Seafaring Society, TSS, was established at the University of Guam, and this was established by Vince Diaz, Dr. Vince Diaz, and Dr. Lawrence Cunningham. And I'd like to give credit to Dr. Lawrence Cunningham, his wife Cheryl, and Eric for helping me put this together, because, like I said, I'm not an expert. It's been years since I worked at CAHA, and I learned a lot. The first one that worked with the University of Guam under Dr. Vince Diaz was Master Navigator Sothenis Emwalo from Purua, and they brought him up, and he helped Vince in his classes, and they taught the first navigation classes at UOG. And then the next person whom I had met earlier, he had done a few things. He'd been living on Guam, and I knew him as Manny Ikea. And he came back in 1997. He had gone back to his islands and received the pearl ritual, and then he came back about 1999 and worked with the TSS for the next 15 years. So these are some of the things that they did with Manny Sakau as the master navigator for Guam. He taught courses at the university. He was given an honorary doctorate degree, and he taught courses that students could earn credit for. 2001, he organized the voyage of the 30-foot Halimata and the 23-foot Quest from Pulawat to Guam. And I know that Dr. Cunningham was one of the two TSS people that was on that. I don't remember who else. Do you know who the other one was?
Yeah, it was, what's his name? William Flood.
Bill Flood, yes, okay. So they took this voyage to Guam, and their purpose was to take the voyage, but they had purchased the Quest as a teaching tool. So they had gone to Purua to finish building that, and then they came back with it. And it was two of the TSS members went on that 500-mile voyage, and then in June of the same year, other members of TSS went from Guam to Saipan, and then the Quest returned to Guam, and the Halematao returned to Purua from Saipan. And again, the Quest was left in Guam as a training vessel for Guam. And then in 2002, we had Typhoon Ponsoboa, which really destroyed the island. And it destroyed the Quest and the big canoe house that they built down on the Ganya Boat Basin. So they spent most of 2003 repairing typhoon damage so they could attend the Festival of Arts in Milao. And that was Guam's first seafaring representation. It was in Palau in 2004. Manny was instrumental in the organizing of the building of the Leon Purua that is now in the Okinawa Oceanic Cultural Museum. He could really see it as drawing awareness to what these tiny islands have. That was his mission for doing it. So that started in Purua in 2005, and one of the presenters at our canoe summit was in on that. She was the Japanese representative for the museum, and she documented the whole thing. They sailed it to Guam. This was close to 2012 by the time they sailed it to Guam. Everything was documented from the beginning, the selection of the woods, all natural materials. Sailed to Guam, and then the Japanese government didn't want to risk losing it, so they wouldn't let them sail to Okinawa. So they disassembled it in Guam and shipped it. And she said, actually, that was good because they saw how you could take apart the canoe, and then when they did reassemble it in Okinawa, it was much easier. So he was very instrumental in that, and then in 2006, the TSS rebuilt their canoe house. But this is, I took this picture at the Oceanic Cultural Museum in Okinawa in 2013. They had opened it in 2012, the Lian Purua, and it's there for the world to see, and it's a very, very traditional canoe. Then in 2006, TSS merged with the TOSI organization. And by the way, TOSI means ocean in Chamorro. Tradition about seafaring islands, but it means TOSI, ocean. And in 2008, they built the Sina, which you see the drawings here, and it was styled after the ancient Chamorro settlement. And I'm sure they referred to Anson's drawings, but they also consulted their Micronesian experts. And in 2009, they sailed the Sina to Rhoda, and with a crew of 5 Chamorros under Palu Manny Sakao. And the names of those crew are still very active. Frank Cruz is now the president of TOSI. I know that Ronald Afaji has his own group, Ulitao. Jose Martinez is with the TASA organization, and Sandra Iseki Okada, and she's an incredible lady. I'm sure she's the first Chamorro woman who made a voyage like that. So this epic voyage reopened the ancient voyaging route between Guam and Rhoda. So the Sina fueled momentum that led to the creation and strengthening of several Chamorro seafaring organizations and programs, and that includes TASA, which Sandra is the president, and then Falolosnia is a private school, canoe building program at the Christian Academy. Uli Tao is Ron Faji's, and he started out down on Tumon Bay in front of the Outrigger Hotel, and he was very visible. He would give rides to tourists, but it was very much a family affair. He got his whole family involved as well as other apprentices. And they built 3 canoes down there before FESPAC. And since FESPAC, they are now based at the Talafofo River Valley of the Lati, and they have their hut and their demonstrations and their canoes, and they have a canoe festival every year at the Valley of the Lati. The Sacman Chelu from San Diego, California, and we heard Mario yesterday. I just like to mention that in 2011, when that was built, they had the Chelu Festival, and I was there as an artist, and it was such a thrill to see that huge canoe there at the festival. It was the main attraction. And then we're going to hear more from Pete about the 500 Sales Project. So in 2008, Rob Lumtiako taught an apprenticeship in Guam to carve Fanui Lanai, and that is the launch of that canoe. He had one Chamorro apprentice, and then he was using the Pulawat community, trying to get them involved in earning, teaching and thus earning jobs. It was hard for members of the Pulawat community to devote the time, even though they were getting paid, because they had families to support and they had their own jobs that they had to not abandon. And so they'd work, and then they'd have to stop when the money ran out, and then they'd have to start again. It's a real struggle for them. And in 2010, Rob was ordained Po by Paruela Rocky in Guam, and he is Rob's father-in-law. So we come to Guam FESPAC 2016, and this is another opening ceremony, arrival of the canoes. Early morning, you see the Chetlu, and in the background are the CNMI canoes standing off again, the boat basin. These are the activities that the CNS, Canoe Navigation and Seafaring, hosted during the festival. And it was very visible because it was down at the festival grounds. They actually housed 85 voyagers there. And that's a story in itself that I won't go into. If any of you were there, you know what it was like. TASA, they actually rose to the occasion and actually made sure that everything happened down there, that they were hosted properly. Sandra Acosta, again, I just give her a lot of credit. Tony was there, he knows. Traditions about Seafaring Islands, TASI was there, and they coordinated the vessel movement and the traditional welcome ceremony program. Uritao, they provided daily canoe carving demonstrations and sailing demonstrations. The Chetlu Sacman was there. They had shipped the Chetlu from here to Guam for that event, and it's still in Guam. And they provided carving demonstrations, vessel tours, and history lectures. And then all of these were in the overnight cruise down to the southern end of Malesso. And that, again, was a thrill to see all those canoes in the water at sunset coming in. It was just fantastic. Falosnia, they provided sailing and shunting demonstrations. Raleigh Cruz was with Southern High School, but he had an after-school class, and they were up at the secondary venue, SKC, to provide these demonstrations, and they also helped the New Zealand artists. And Ned Pablo also was helping with the continuity carvers and assisting in the Voyager vessel repairs, because they did have some repairs that needed to be done. So I want to say a little bit in closing about the Canoe Summit. We had a Canoe Summit on May 26, 2016, during the festival. We had a total of 17 presenters and 96 people in attendance. The islands represented are up there. It was facilitated by Dr. Vince Diaz, and the summit goal was set. We had a UNESCO representative, a regional representative from the Pacific region. She kind of guided what we were to do at the summit, and then it was funded by two Japanese organizations that I can, the National Research Institute for Cultural Properties in Tokyo funded that venue. So the main goal was to make headway for UNESCO in their interest to safeguard Pacific wayfinding systems as an intangible cultural heritage element. And I think that is something that we all need to continue to pursue, because it will give us much more visibility and maybe some funding. And the voyage continues. Sainam Asi, and I'd like to thank the organizers here. They've done a fantastic job.